You now have your problem, and we can start the behavioural design process. We are entering insight. Now, insight is one of the most important phases of a behavioural designer's workflow. We prioritise insight over inspiration, which means that if something is observable and measurable, it's something that's of value to your job as a behavioural designer. Insight is divided into two main sections. The first is called target. And target is where we take your initial problem and we start to look for key behavioural components within it. That then structures the behavioural problem that you can then take into the rest of the process. The other section is explore. Explore is when you've turned it into a behaviour problem, you start to break it down and look at the context and the story of the behaviour around it. So let's start with target. Target is broken down into 4 key components. These 4 key components make up a tool called KISS. Key behaviour, ideal behaviour, stakeholders, and setting. It is a tool that's included in the activity sections of this course, and we'll use it heavily in this module, so look out to download it. So the first thing we need to do is to take the problem and start to really ask about who all the people are that are involved in it. These are the stakeholders. Think of stakeholders as all the people in a Broadway show. When I say to you, think of the people in the Broadway show, your first instinct is to think of the actors, all those people that are belting out their tunes on the stage. But there are other people. There are other people involved in a Broadway show. And those other people are the support actors and the support cast. They could be the light rigger, they could be the writer, the ice cream vendor, the costume designer. They all have a part in putting on the show. And actually, they have a really important part in putting on the show. And stakeholders is about asking, who are all these people involved in the behaviour, not just the first people we think about. Next, we go on to key behaviour. We ask, well, if that's what all the actors are doing and all the supporting cast are doing, what are the actual key behaviours that they're doing? What are those actions and decisions that they're making? Because behavioural design looks to pinpoint a couple of key actions and decisions, and they will determine your overall project, not the initial problem that you started with. Once we've determined the key behaviours, we then look at the context of those behaviours. Well, where are they? Where are these people doing these things? You know, was it before something or after something? Is it a particular time of the year, or is it in a particular location like at work or at home? Behaviour is really dependent on context to a degree that actually we become obsessed with the context of behaviour. People can do behaviour A in one situation, but as soon as you change the situation, they will stop doing the behaviour entirely. And it's our role to figure out, well, what is the context? What are the prompts? What are all the triggers in that context that means that they do behaviour A? Once you've mapped the context, we can then use the insight that's stacked up in the method to figure out, well, if this is the problem behaviour that's contributing to the problem, or the key behaviour, what if we flip it? What if we actually inverted it and turned it into the ideal behaviour? If the problem is that people are sedentary at work, what would the ideal behaviour of all those little components that you've identified within the behaviour? Your ideal behaviour becomes your project goal. That is your behavioural problem. And that's what we'll focus on going forward. Once you've identified your key specific behavioural problem, you can start taking it into explore. And explore is when we start looking at all the story of the behaviour that's before you. You'll start mapping, well, if they do A, what happens at B and what happens at C? And if they can do D, but maybe they do E, what is the other decision that they could possibly be making? And it's about making a really, really complicated behaviour into simple, significant, observable and measurable steps. And once we've got that, you've got it all mapped out in front of you, the rest of the process will be really simple. The behaviour flow becomes the core tool that you will use in every single step going forward. When you identify all the barriers within your behaviour flow.